Millionaire's car breaks down. But when a poor little girl fixes it, he sees her mother's ring on her finger. She stepped out of the trees like she belonged to another world, grease on her hands, a toolbox in her grip, and her mother's ring glinting in the sunlight. He only needed his car fixed, but the moment he saw her, his past came rushing back. Before we continue, if you enjoy touching and inspiring stories like this one, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. Now let's get back to the story. The engine hissed, coughed, then went dead. Gabriel Thorne stepped out of his car, frustration simmering beneath his calm exterior. He wasn't used to things failing, not his cars, not his companies, and certainly not his plans. Yet here he was, stranded on a narrow country road with no cell signal, no nearby houses, and no clue what had just happened to his $500,000 machine. He popped the hood more out of instinct than knowledge. Steam rose from the engine like a quiet accusation. "Well," he muttered, "that's new." Then, from somewhere behind him, a voice cut through the air, small, confident, and utterly unexpected. "Need help?" Gabriel turned. At the edge of the tree line stood a girl, maybe 10, maybe younger. Her jeans were torn at the knees, and a streak of grease ran across her cheek. She wore a faded t-shirt and a baseball cap far too big for her, pulled low over wild reddish hair. She carried a small toolbox like it was part of her arm. He blinked. "I don't think you're exactly certified to work on one of these." She shrugged. "Probably not, but I fixed worse. You want it running or not?" Gabriel almost laughed, but something in her tone stopped him. She wasn't being cute. She was serious. "You live around here?" he asked. "My aunt's place is just through the woods," she replied, already walking toward the car. "I help my uncle with cars on weekends. He used to be a mechanic." "And you're his apprentice?" "More like his shadow. He says I'm a natural." She reached the hood and peered in without hesitation. "You overheated. Coolant lines loose, maybe cracked. Could patch it maybe, at least enough to get you moving." Gabriel crossed his arms, both amused and intrigued. "And you can fix that? Want to bet?" Something about her confidence disarmed him. Maybe it was her voice, unshaken, unafraid, or maybe it was how she didn't flinch in front of a man who was clearly wealthy, clearly out of place, and clearly not used to hearing the word maybe. "All right," he said, gesturing to the engine. "Show me." She pulled a pair of gloves from her back pocket, popped open her kit, and got to work. Quick hands, sure movements, like she'd done it 100 times before. Gabriel watched, impressed despite himself. "What's your name?" he asked. "Lila." "Lila what?" She glanced at him sideways. Why do rich people always ask last names first? He grinned. "You got me." He stayed quiet as she tightened a valve, adjusted a clamp, and wiped the edge of the engine with an old rag. "There," she said, stepping back. "That should hold. Don't push it too hard. You'll get to town maybe a little further." Gabriel walked around and turned the key. The engine roared, not perfectly, but enough. He looked at her, stunned. "You're something else." "I know," she said, already packing up. That's when he saw it. She reached down to close her toolbox, and the sleeve of her shirt slid up. There, on her finger, a gold ring. Thin, elegant. A single emerald at the center, not flashy, but unmistakable. Gabriel froze. He knew that ring. He had bought that ring. That ring," he said, voice catching. "Where did you get that?" Lila paused, looked down. "It was my mom's," she said softly. "What's her name?" She hesitated. "Elise." The name hit him like a punch to the chest. "Elise Morgan?" he asked, barely breathing. Lila blinked, suddenly wary. "You knew her?" Gabriel stepped back, trying to gather himself. She was someone I loved. A long time ago." Lila didn't move, didn't speak. Gabriel's thoughts spun. Elise had left him without a word more than a decade ago. No goodbye. No closure. He'd searched for her, Looked in every city she might have run to, but she'd vanished. Now her daughter was standing in front of him. "She never told me she had a child," he whispered. Lila frowned. "My mom never talked much about the past. Said it hurt too much." Do you live with your dad?" She shook her head. "I never met him. She told me he was gone before I was born." Gabriel swallowed hard. 100 memories surged at once. Elise laughing in the park. Elise curled against him in the early mornings. Elise crying the night he asked her what was wrong, and she only said, "Nothing I can fix." He crouched down, eye level with the girl. "How old are you, Lila?" 10. Almost 11. She was born just months after Elise disappeared. He didn't want to jump to conclusions, but his heart was already moving ahead of him. "She ever talk about someone named Gabriel?" Lila's eyes widened, just slightly. "She had a picture," she whispered. "A man she kept in a book. She told me once that if anything ever happened to her, I should find him." Gabriel's throat tightened. That man in the picture was him. Lila shifted her bag higher onto her shoulder, unaware of the storm she had just stirred. "And Gabriel?" He stood in the middle of the road, staring at the girl, wondering how much of his life had been a lie, and how much of it was about to change forever. Gabriel drove slowly, as if pressing the gas too hard might break the fragile reality he was trying to process. Lila sat in the passenger seat, legs swinging slightly, her backpack in her lap, silent except for the occasional glance in his direction. He couldn't stop staring at her, not directly but through the corner of his eyes, the slope of her nose, the way she tapped her fingers when she was nervous, little echoes of someone he had once known better than himself. "So," he said finally, voice tentative, "your mom, when did she pass away?" Lila looked down. 3 years ago, she got sick. Sick how? Just sick. At first it was headaches. Then she couldn't eat. Then the doctor said it was something wrong in her blood. She didn't want to go to the hospital anymore. Gabriel clenched the steering wheel tighter. "And she never told you about your father? Not even a name?" Lila shook her head. "My aunt always said I didn't need to know, that it wasn't safe." "Safe?" She nodded. "She said Mom left the city because someone was looking for her. Someone powerful. She never told me who." Gabriel's chest burned. He remembered the fight. Elise had been distant for weeks. Then one night she showed up at his apartment, pale, shaking. He'd asked what was wrong. She'd looked him in the eye and said, "I have to go." He thought she was running from him. Now he realized she might have been trying to protect him. "Can I ask you something?" Lila said suddenly. "Of course." "Why are you being so weird about all this?" Gabriel laughed softly, surprised by her honesty. "Because I think I might be your father." Lila turned sharply, blinking. "Wait, seriously?" He nodded slowly. "You said you're 10. Elise disappeared about 11 years ago. She never told me she was pregnant. I didn't even know she was leaving. One day she was just gone." Lila leaned back, processing. "That's a lot." "Yeah, it is." They rode in silence for a few minutes. Eventually, they reached a small town. Gabriel pulled into the lot of a quiet diner, the kind with faded booths, old coffee pots, and a sleepy ceiling fan spinning overhead. He figured she needed food, and he needed a moment to think. They sat in a corner booth. Lila ordered a grilled cheese and fries. Gabriel asked for black coffee, though it tasted like burnt water. She watched him over the rim of her glass of orange soda. "So, if you really are my dad, what happens now?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'd like to get to know you, and maybe learn more about your mom. I never got closure, and I think you didn't either." "I don't even know what she was running from," Lila said. "She had nightmares sometimes, said we were being followed. But when I asked, she'd just say, 'It's not your weight to carry.'" Gabriel looked out the window. "That sounds like her." A thought crossed his mind. Is there anything she left behind? Letters, journals, photos? Anything that might explain what happened? Lila thought for a moment. There's a box. My aunt keeps it locked in the attic. I've never seen inside, but I know it was my mom's. Gabriel leaned forward. Can you take me there? She'll freak out if she sees you. We won't stay long. I just need to know. The house was a small, worn-out cottage on the edge of a dirt road. The front yard was overgrown, and a dog barked somewhere inside as they approached. Lila slipped around the back, leading Gabriel to a narrow staircase that creaked with every step. Inside the attic, it smelled like dust and old paper. Lila pulled back a tarp and pointed to a wooden chest. That's it. Gabriel knelt, hands shaking slightly as he opened the lid. Inside were pieces of Elise's life. A scarf, a hairbrush, an old cell phone, a cracked photo frame. The picture inside was of Elise, younger, standing under a tree, hand resting on her belly. His breath caught. She had been pregnant. She hadn't told him, and still she'd kept him close in her memory. Then at the bottom of the box, wrapped in fabric, was a small envelope. His name was written on the front in Elise's handwriting. He opened it slowly. Gabriel, if you're reading this, then I guess our daughter found you. I always hoped she would. I wanted to tell you I wanted so badly to stay, but I was scared and sick. And someone was watching me. Someone who said if I didn't disappear, they'd make sure you disappeared instead. I chose silence. I chose to protect you from pain. And it cost me everything. Please take care of Lila. She's more like you than she knows. I never stopped loving you. Elise. Gabriel sat back, eyes wet, heart in pieces. He looked at Lila, who stood watching him quietly. She really loved you, didn't she? She asked. He nodded. And I loved her. Lila stepped forward. And if you're really my dad, I guess that means we have a lot to catch up on. Gabriel smiled through the tears. Yeah, we do. Just as they closed the attic chest, a door slammed downstairs. Lila? A sharp voice called out. Why is there a car in the driveway? Lila's eyes widened. That's my aunt. You have to hide. Lila? The voice was closer now, footsteps echoing through the hallway downstairs. Lila froze. She's home early. You were supposed to have more time. Gabriel whispered, Where can I go? She pointed to the back of the attic, behind some stacked boxes. Gabriel moved quickly and crouched low, pulling an old tarp over part of his body. Seconds later, the attic door creaked open. A woman in her 50s climbed up, eyes sharp, posture tense. Her features were tired, her hands calloused like life had worn her thin. But her presence still filled the room. Aunt May, Lila said, trying to sound casual. I was just looking for some of Mom's old stuff. May's eyes scanned the room. She didn't speak at first. Then her gaze fell on the open chest. I told you not to touch that. I know, Lila said quickly. But I found something. A letter. May stepped closer, and Lila took a small step back. A letter for someone named Gabriel. May froze. Her lips pressed together in a hard line. She knew the name. You found him, didn't you? She asked. Voice sharp. Lila hesitated. Then Gabriel stepped out of hiding. I'm right here. May spun around. Her eyes flashed with something like shock, and then anger. You shouldn't be here. I didn't come looking for you, Gabriel said calmly. Your niece found me. I didn't even know Elise had a daughter. I didn't know she was pregnant. I didn't know anything. May's jaw clenched. That's exactly how Elise wanted it. Gabriel took a step forward. She was dying. And scared. I know that now. I read her letter. I know someone threatened her. But why keep everything from me? Why hide Lila from her own father? May crossed her arms. Because Elise thought you'd come charging back into her life, and that it would make things worse. She didn't want pity, and she didn't want Lila to grow up in your world. Gabriel frowned. What do you mean, my world? Money, power, Headlines. People who pretend to care until the cameras leave. He shook his head. That's not who I am. You think Elise didn't know that? May snapped. She loved you. But love wasn't enough to save her. She was sick, Gabriel. And she didn't want you to watch her die. The attic went quiet. The only sound was the soft creak of the old wood beneath their feet. I would have stayed, he said after a moment. Even if it broke me, I would have stayed. May looked at him, and her expression softened a little. I believe you, she said, but believing you doesn't change what happened. They both turned to Lila. She stood by the window, looking out over the trees, her arms wrapped around herself. So, that's it? She asked. All this time you both knew pieces of the story and didn't tell me anything? I was trying to protect you, May said. So was Mom, Lila muttered. And all it did was make everything more confusing. Gabriel crossed the room and knelt beside her. I know this is a lot, too much, maybe. But if you'll let me, I want to be part of your life. No more secrets, no more silence. Just the truth. Always. Lila looked at him, eyes glassy, voice quiet. I don't know what to think yet. That's okay, he said softly. We can figure it out together. There was another long pause. Then May stepped toward them, holding a small leather notebook in her hand. Elise gave this to me before she passed. She said to only give it to Lila, or to you, if you ever came back. Gabriel took the notebook carefully, his hands trembling. On the front, written in faded ink, were the initials, E.M. Thank you, he said quietly. May nodded. She loved you, you know, right up to the end. Gabriel nodded but didn't speak. His throat was too tight. That night, Gabriel sat in a small guest room at the back of the house, the notebook resting in his lap. Lila had gone to bed early, exhausted by everything that had unraveled in just a few hours. He opened the first page. If you're reading this, I hope it means you found each other. I didn't want it to be like this. I wanted to stay. I wanted to grow old with you. But some wishes don't come true. So I wrote everything I couldn't say when I was still here. Each entry was a window into Elise's final months. Her fears, her love, her regrets. She had known she was dying. She had known that people were watching her. And she had made the hardest choice of all, to leave Gabriel behind, so that he could live without the weight of her pain. You were always my light, Gabriel. But I didn't want my darkness to pull you under. Lila is everything good I have left. She's stubborn like you, brave like you. Please, don't let her forget who she is. Tears blurred the ink as Gabriel closed the book. He didn't know what tomorrow would look like. But tonight, he knew one thing for certain. He hadn't lost Elise completely. Because part of her was still here, sleeping just down the hall, dreaming under a blanket stitched by her mother's hands. Outside, under the moonlight, a figure sat in a car parked just down the road, watching the house, a phone in hand. He pressed a button. Recording saved. Gabriel hadn't slept much. After reading Elise's notebook, his thoughts churned for hours, for guilt, love, grief. All of it tangled in the same knot that had been sitting in his chest for over a decade. But there was something else now, too. Purpose. In the morning, he found Lila sitting alone on the porch swing, legs tucked up, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She didn't look at him right away, just kept watching the trees as if they might offer answers no one else could. I didn't sleep, she said. Me neither. Too many ghosts? Gabriel sat beside her, the old swing creaking gently beneath their weight. Yeah, and too many regrets. A long pause. Then finally she turned to him. Were you mad at her for not telling you? He shook his head slowly. I was for a long time. I thought she left because she didn't love me anymore. But that was never true. He reached into his jacket and pulled out Elise's notebook. She loved both of us more than we'll ever understand. Lila stared at it. She was always writing in something, said her words were the only place she felt safe. Gabriel placed the notebook in her hands. "I think she wanted you to read this." Lila didn't open it. She just held it against her chest and nodded. By midday, they'd decided to drive back to Gabriel's farmhouse, the one he'd kept all these years but hadn't visited since Elise left. It wasn't much, but it was quiet, hidden and surrounded by trees and distance, exactly the kind of place where they could breathe. Gabriel hadn't told May where they were going. Not yet. He needed time with Lila. Just them. Time to be more than a stranger with the same eyes. They packed light. Lila insisted on bringing her mom's old camera and toolbox. "I still want to fix things," she said. Gabriel smiled. "You already are." The drive was peaceful. She asked questions about the city, about how many cars he'd owned, about whether he really had an elevator in his apartment. He did. She laughed when he admitted he once tried to make toast in a microwave. She snorted when he told her how her mother used to beat him at chess every single time, without even trying. Every minute peeled away a layer of distance between them. She wasn't just Elise's daughter anymore. She was his daughter too. But what they didn't see, what neither of them could have known, was the black SUV parked a few streets from May's house after they left. Inside, a man scrolled through photos on his phone. Gabriel stepping out of the attic. Lila holding the notebook. A picture of the ring on her finger. He tapped the screen, sent the file. Then he called a number with no name. "They're together now. The girl has the book." The voice on the other end was gravel. "Find out what else she has. And if she knows too much, end it." That evening at the farmhouse, Lila explored while Gabriel unlocked old cabinets, dusted shelves, and aired out the rooms. In one drawer, he found a faded photo of Elise sitting on the front steps, barefoot, smiling with the sun in her eyes. He hadn't even remembered taking it. He stared at the photo for a long time. Then Lila walked in with a box in her hands. "Found something." He looked up. "What is it?" It was under the floorboard. "Looks like Mom hid it." The box was metal, dented, locked with a tiny latch. Gabriel pried it open. Inside, a flash drive, a folded letter, a newspaper clipping with a red circle drawn around one name. Gerald Maddox. Gabriel's blood went cold. Maddox. His father's old business partner. A man with influence, money, and no conscience. Years ago, Maddox had warned Gabriel about Elise. Said she was a distraction, said she'd ruin everything. Gabriel had dismissed him, fired him, thought that was the end of it. But maybe it hadn't been. He opened the letter. "If anything happens to me, it's not an accident." Maddox made it clear. "I thought I could protect you by disappearing. But if he finds Lila, if he finds this, please, do what I couldn't. Fight him, expose him. Don't let him silence the truth." Gabriel's jaw tightened. This wasn't just about love or abandonment. It was about a cover-up, a threat that had never gone away. Lila leaned over the box. "What's on the drive?" "We're going to find out," he said. "But not here. Somewhere safer." Lila stared at the letter. "So Maddox is the reason she left." Gabriel nodded. "And maybe the reason she died sooner." The anger on Lila's face surprised him. It wasn't loud, it wasn't violent, it was calm and cold. "Then we have to stop him." Gabriel looked at her, really looked, and saw not just Elise, but someone entirely new, someone brave enough to stand in the fire. "You're just like your mom," he said. "Good," she whispered, "because I don't plan on running." Later that night, while they slept, the black SUV rolled slowly past the farmhouse, its headlights off. A man inside whispered into a radio, "Target located, waiting for orders." Gabriel woke up just after 5 a.m. The farmhouse was quiet. The kind of quiet that feels earned. The air was cool, the windows slightly fogged from the early spring chill. Somewhere in the distance, a bird chirped its first uncertain song of the day. He made coffee the way Elise used to. Strong, no sugar, 2 drops of vanilla. Then he sat at the old wooden table and watched the morning arrive through the wide kitchen window. A creak on the stairs pulled him from his thoughts. Lila appeared, wrapped in a hoodie far too big for her. She rubbed her eyes and mumbled, "Why are mornings a thing?" Gabriel chuckled. "You get used to them, or at least you lie to yourself about it." She gave him a sleepy side-eye. "You're way too cheerful for a man who almost got killed by squirrels in the attic last night." "That was one squirrel," he said defensively, "and it was a tactical retreat." Lila smirked and joined him at the table. "Mom would have loved watching that." "Yeah," Gabriel said softly, smiling. "She would have." There was a silence after that. Not awkward, not heavy, just full. Lila finally opened the notebook and flipped through a few pages. "I read some of it last night," she said. "The way she talked about you, it was like she still believed you were part of her, even when she was gone." Gabriel swallowed hard. "She said you used to make her laugh when she wanted to cry, that she'd watch you work, and it was like seeing someone build something no one else believed in." He looked down at his coffee, gripping the cup a little tighter. "She believed in me when no one else did," he said, "even before I became this." She nodded. "She didn't care about money, or what people said about her. She just wanted you to be okay." He reached across the table and placed his hand gently over hers. "I wasn't okay," he said. "Not after she left. But I think maybe I could be. Now." After breakfast, they drove into the nearby town to find a place with stable Wi-Fi and a decent computer. The flash drive Elise had hidden was their last clue, and if it contained what Gabriel suspected, it might explain everything. They found an old public library still using outdated machines, but Gabriel brought his own laptop. He connected to a secure network, then slid the drive into the port. It took a few seconds to load. Lila leaned over his shoulder. A folder opened. Inside were scans of medical reports, photographs of Elise with various bruises and hospital tags, emails between her and a private investigator, and one file titled Thorn Holdings, Internal Risk Report, Confidential, 2011. Gabriel clicked, and then he saw it. A document prepared by Gerald Maddox, dated just weeks before Elise vanished. It outlined potential threats to public perception and company valuation, specifically citing Gabriel's romantic involvement with Elise Morgan as a high-risk liability. Beneath that was a chilling paragraph. If separation cannot be achieved willingly, further action will be required. Recommended strategies include media discreditation, legal coercion, and, if necessary, silent dissolution of threat assets. Gabriel stared at the screen. Silent dissolution of threat assets. They hadn't just driven Elise away. They had tried to erase her. "They wanted her gone," Lila whispered. "And me." Gabriel felt sick, furious, powerless, and more determined than ever. "They won't get away with it," he said. "Not this time." He copied every file, sent encrypted backups to 3 secure servers. Lila watched him work, her face unreadable. "Are you scared?" she asked quietly. Gabriel looked at her, terrified. "But I'm done running." That night, back at the farmhouse, they sat outside under the stars. Lila lay in the grass beside him, pointing up at constellations with a flashlight. "You think Mom can see us?" she asked. "I hope so," he said. "I think she'd be proud of you." "I think she'd be proud of you too." He turned to her. "Why?" "Because you showed up," she said. "And you stayed." Those words hit harder than any gunshot ever could have. He hadn't realized how much it mattered to her, how much of her life had been waiting for something she couldn't even name. They stayed out there for a long time, until the air grew cold, until the night felt safe, until it wasn't. A soft click came from the kitchen door. Gabriel sat up, instantly alert. "Lila," he whispered. "Inside. Now." She ran behind him as he moved toward the house. Another sound, this time a shadow moving past the window. He reached into the cabinet near the door and pulled out the pistol he'd kept locked away for years. "Stay behind me." The back door creaked open just a fraction. Then a voice. "Gabriel Thorne, we don't want to hurt you. Just hand over the drive." Gabriel's blood turned to ice. "They found us," he whispered. Lila clutched his arm. "What do we do?" He took a breath. "We protect what matters." Outside, a figure stepped out of the trees, dressed in black, face hidden, voice calm. "Last chance, Thorne." And Gabriel, holding his daughter behind him, replied, "You already had yours." The flashlight beam danced across the kitchen walls. Gabriel moved slowly, Lila clinging to his side, both of them crouched low as another voice echoed through the house. "You've got something that doesn't belong to you," the man called. "We only want the drive." Gabriel's grip on the pistol tightened. "Tell Maddox he'll have to come himself." A beat of silence. "Then he's dead." Gabriel's blood ran cold. "What?" "He had a heart attack 3 days ago. But the mess he left behind? It's ours to clean." The man's voice was calm, almost professional. No rage, no fear, just a job being done. Lila looked up at her father, whispering, "What do we do?" Gabriel didn't answer right away. He was scanning the shadows, thinking, listening. Then he whispered back, "We run, out the back. I'll distract them." "No," she said. "Not again. No more splitting up." He looked her in the eyes, those same eyes Elise once had, and saw she meant it. She wouldn't be left behind. Not after everything. He nodded once. "All right, but when I say go, we go fast." She swallowed hard and squeezed his hand. Gabriel tossed a ceramic bowl across the room. It crashed loudly near the front door, drawing attention. The shadow in the kitchen moved toward it. "Now," Gabriel whispered. They bolted through the back hallway, out a narrow side exit and into the dark. But two figures were already waiting near the barn. One stepped forward, raising a flashlight, the beam catching Lila's face. "There she is." Gabriel fired once into the ground, not to hit but to startle. "Back off!" The men scattered behind the truck as Gabriel and Lila ran across the yard, breath tight in their lungs, heartbeats pounding like thunder. Behind them, someone shouted, "Don't let them get to the road." They ducked into the trees, Gabriel pulling Lila behind a thick pine trunk. "There's a trail," he whispered. "About half a mile. Leads to an old ranger station. If we make it—" "I hear you," someone yelled. "Don't move!" Gabriel raised his gun, but before he could fire, a loud crack exploded beside them. The man who'd been chasing them dropped like a stone. From the tree line, a second shot rang out. Clean, controlled. Gabriel turned toward the sound. A shadow stepped into view. A woman. "Gabriel?" the voice called. He blinked. "Rafaela?" She moved closer, rifle slung across her chest, black tactical gear covered in dirt and sap. Her silver hair was tied back in a tight braid. "I told you I'd come if you ever needed me," she said. Gabriel laughed, part relief, part disbelief. "You always did know how to make an entrance. I saw the photo, the ring, the file leak, figured it was time to check on my goddaughter." She looked down at Lila and smiled. "You have your mom's fire," she said. Lila, still stunned, whispered, "You knew my mom?" Rafaela nodded. "We were best friends, and she made me promise one thing. If things ever went sideways, protect you." More footsteps sounded nearby. More agents of whatever quiet, dirty organization had picked up Maddox's work. Rafaela didn't wait. She tossed Gabriel a spare magazine and handed Lila a flashlight. "Stay behind me." For 10 tense minutes, they fought their way back to the trailhead, dodging, ducking, evading the few who dared to follow. But once they reached the ranger station, tucked into the woods and locked behind an old steel door, they were safe, at least for the night. Inside, they lit an old kerosene lamp. The room smelled like dust and pine. Lila sat beside Gabriel on a worn-out cot, holding the notebook tight against her chest. "You okay?" he asked. She nodded. "I wasn't afraid." He put his arm around her. "Neither was your mom." Rafaela checked the windows, then joined them. "You need to release the files," she said. "All of it. Publicly. Broadcast the truth so loud, no one can bury it again." "I already made backups," Gabriel said. "One with my lawyer, one with a news outlet, another on a timed drop server. It's going out tomorrow morning." Rafaela smiled. "You've learned a thing or two." He smiled faintly. "From the best." Lila looked at the two of them. "So, what happens now?" Gabriel looked at her, and the words came easier than he thought they would. "Now we stop running. We tell the world who you are, we clear your mother's name, and we start living like she always wanted us to." Lila stared down at the ring on her finger. "I think she knew this would happen," she said. "That one day we'd all find each other." Gabriel brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. "She always was smarter than the rest of us." Somewhere in the dark, the last of Maddox's men made their retreat. The order had come through. Stand down. The storm had passed, but the story wasn't over. The next morning, as the files dropped across the internet, headlines exploded. Whistleblower exposes secret corporate cover-up, daughter of Elise Morgan found alive. Gabriel Thorne breaks silence. But none of them knew what was coming next, because far away, in a quiet hospital wing, Elise Morgan opened her eyes. The sun was just beginning to rise over the horizon, casting soft gold across the world as if it, too, had been waiting for this moment. Gabriel sat in the hospital corridor, elbows on his knees, staring at the linoleum floor like it held the answers he'd been chasing for over a decade. She's alive. He'd said it to himself 100 times in the last few hours, but it still felt impossible. The message had come through encrypted channels, flagged by a whistleblower within a private clinic tied to Maddox's firm. Patient EM admitted 3 years ago under protective isolation. Condition terminal. Status, stabilized. Elise Morgan, alive. He was shaking when the nurse came to him. "You can go in now," she said gently, "but she's weak. Keep your voice soft." He nodded, too numb to respond with words. He stepped into the room. It smelled like antiseptic and lavender, faint traces of her old perfume still clinging to the few things she'd been allowed to keep. And there she was, pale, thin, but undeniably her. Eyes closed, fingers twitching against the blanket. "Elise?" he whispered. Her eyes opened, slowly, carefully, and when she saw him, they filled with tears. "Gabriel," she breathed. Her voice was a rasp, but it was real. "You came." He crossed the room in seconds, dropped to his knees beside her bed and took her hand in both of his. "You're alive," he said, eyes welling up. "So are you." He let out a breath that sounded more like a sob. "Why didn't you let me find you?" Her fingers gripped his, weak but present. "I couldn't. Maddox's people. They told me if I contacted you, Lila would disappear next. I had no choice. I gave myself up hoping she'd stay hidden long enough for someone to find her." Gabriel shook his head, tears falling freely now. "We thought you were gone." "I thought I was too," she whispered. "They said I was dying and I almost did. But you didn't." "No," she said, voice barely above a breath. "Because I kept dreaming of her." Gabriel smiled through the tears. "She found me, Elise. Lila found me on the side of the road. She fixed my car." That pulled the faintest laugh from her chest. "Of course she did. She's incredible, brave, brilliant, so much like you." Elise looked away, blinking rapidly. "I wanted to give her everything, Gabriel, but I couldn't even give her time." He leaned in, his forehead touching her hand. "You gave her more than you'll ever know." There was a quiet knock on the door. Lila stood in the doorway, unsure, nervous. The same girl who had once walked out of the woods and into his life. Now standing in front of the mother she thought she'd lost forever. Elise's eyes widened. Lila? Lila stepped forward slowly, like the ground might give way beneath her. Mom? Elise reached out a trembling hand. Come here, baby. Lila rushed forward, burying herself into her mother's arms. No words, just breathing, just the sound of tears on skin. And after all the distance, all the silence, all the heartbreak, the three of them were finally in the same room. Whole, not perfect, not healed all the way, but together. Weeks passed. Elise grew stronger with each day, no longer confined to a hospital bed. The clinic, once hidden in shadow, was now under investigation. Maddox's empire had crumbled, and the world had seen the truth. Gabriel sold his shares in Thorn Holdings and dissolved the company's board. In its place, he created the Elise Foundation, a global initiative dedicated to protecting women and children from corporate corruption, abuse of power, and forced disappearances. He never wanted anyone to live in fear like Elise had. Lila transferred to a new school near the coast. She still fixed engines in the garage with Gabriel on weekends, still wore her mother's ring every day. And Elise? She was home. Home in the way that mattered, beside the people she loved, not hiding anymore, not afraid. One day they returned to the farmhouse. The cherry tree Lila had planted was in full bloom. They stood under its branches, Gabriel, Lila, and Elise, watching the petals drift in the wind. This tree saved me, Lila said. It made me believe she was still here. I was, Elise said softly. Everything felt possible again. That night, Gabriel stood on the porch looking out at the stars. The same stars he had once stared at alone, wondering if the past would ever let him go. Elise stepped beside him, rested her head on his shoulder. Do you still dream about her? He asked quietly. She nodded, wrapping an arm around her daughter. I always was. Gabriel turned to them both. You know, we could just stay here forever. Lila grinned. Only if I get my own garage. You'll get two, he said. And a dog. They all laughed. And in that moment, with spring in the air and the wind warm on their skin, but now they're good dreams. He kissed her forehead, holding her close. I never stopped loving you, he said. She looked up at him, her eyes shining. I know. I never stopped loving you either. And from inside the house, Lila's laughter floated through the open windows, full and wild like a song that had finally found its ending. And now I ask you, if life gave you one more chance to make something right, would you be brave enough to take it? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Thanks for watching.